The true story of Bridget O'Donnell. Bridget O'Donnell, a tenant farmer's wife, became a symbol of the suffering endured during the Great Irish Famine, 1845-1852. Her story, captured in a sketch and interview by a journalist in 1849, paints a vivid and heartbreaking picture of the time. Bridget lived in County Clare with her husband and children. Like most Irish families, they relied heavily on the potato crop. When the blight struck, their harvest rotted in the ground, leaving them destitute. Unable to pay their rent to the local landlord, they were evicted from their small cottage. The eviction was brutal. Bridget, already weak from hunger and pregnant, was dragged from her home along with her husband and children. The family was left homeless, with no possessions or shelter, exposed to the harsh winter winds. Soon after, Bridget suffered a miscarriage, a tragic consequence of the violence and malnutrition she endured. A journalist traveling through Ireland during the famine met Bridget and recorded her story. She recounted how she and her family had wandered the countryside, begging for food and shelter. Eventually, they ended up in a workhouse, a grim institution meant to provide relief to the destitute. The conditions there were appalling, overcrowded, unsanitary, and rife with disease. Bridget lost her husband and one of her children to fever in the workhouse. Despite her hardships, she managed to survive, though her face, etched with grief, became a haunting emblem of the famine's toll. Her likeness, sketched by the journalist, was published in British newspapers alongside her story. It stirred outrage and brought attention to the horrors of the famine. The image of Bridget, a grieving mother clutching her surviving children, symbolized the human cost of policies that prioritized landlords' profits over the survival of tenants. Bridget O'Donnell's story is just one of millions. Yet her resilience and the documentation of her plight ensure that her voice continues to speak for the countless others who suffered during one of Ireland's darkest chapters.